On today's Transport Evolved, we look at the service industry for advanced fuel vehicles, talk about Michelin's new fuel efficiency tyres, discuss Riva's strategy for future investment, and Aptera's explanation for that self-opening door at the X Prize, coming up next on Transport Evolved.
It's time to evolve your transport.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. It is Thursday, the 3rd of June 2010, and this is episode number 2 of Transport Evolved. I'm Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield.
And I'm Michael Boxwell.
How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing very well, thanks, Nikki. Yourself?
Yeah, brilliant. I've been busy, ran off my feet, but other than that, doing pretty well.
Good,
do you know what?
Good.
I think I think our designer has just joined our chat room. Steve, who designed this fantastic new logo. Do you like it? I'll show it back on the screen. This is the Transport Evolved logo. What do you think?
I think it looks fantastic. It's really, really smart.
Really, 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 really smart. As someone said earlier on, it does look a little bit like the Modec logo, but actually, no, it doesn't. If you hold it from a distance and it's nice.
Twin.
It's supposed to symbolise the different forms of transport all coming together and moving along. And I think it's great. Steve's in the chat room. Steve, thank you very much. I think you are a fantastically talented chap. And I know he's working on a great new website design for us at www.transportevolve.com, which is fantastic as well. Anyway, enough of the new design for the site. How are things going in your neck of the woods, Mike? What's going on with the electric cars and everything else?
Well, we've been having fun with electric cars this week. My Mitsubishi i-MiEV died on me at the beginning of the week, which is great fun. It turned out to be an auxiliary battery gone flat, so we got that recharged and off we went.
You have to charge your batteries up, mate.
I know. Well, this was the auxiliary battery, which for some reason didn't get charged up when the rest of it got charged. So goodness knows why. But I was maybe I did something silly last week because I deliberately drove the electric car until it was out of juice. It went down to 0 miles, and I kept driving it and kept driving it, and eventually it said, right, okay, I'm having enough of this, and it pulled over and stopped. So which is fair enough.
So you were pushing it to its limits. So it was your fault.
Absolutely.
Not the Mitsubishi's fault.
No, so I wanted to see exactly what would happen if you got to 0 miles and kept driving. And the story is that you can keep going for about 7 or 8 miles. So I thought that was quite a useful test.
Hey, now, I'm not going to have you encouraging people playing fuel gauge lottery with their electric cars or any type of car. I used to own a 1965 Morris Minor, affectionately termed Hebe, because her number plate was EBE. Anyway, my friend, we should refer to her as Pure Kate. Great friend of mine has a 1969 Morris Minor, and she could drive her Morris Minor until the fuel gauge was at the E of empty. In fact, beyond the E of empty. And I quizzed her on it one day. She said, "Oh no, I've got plenty of fuel in the tank." I was going down the freeway and I thought, well, I guess I'll just find out. She said hers goes down past the E, it'll be fine. Mine runs out before the bottom of the fuel gauge, before the E even gets there. And I ceremoniously spluttered to a halt, probably about 200 feet from the end of the off-ramp. And so I had to ring up a friend who had to drive 20 miles just to bring me a can of gas to get off the freeway. Never mind.
Right.
That's why I moved on.
If you're going to run out of fuel, make sure you run out of fuel close to your home. So, I mean, the last bit of testing I did on the i-MiEV was just going round and round the block around where I live. So when it eventually spluttered to a halt, I literally just had to roll into the drive. Worked really well.
Oh, there you go. Mr. Clever Chops. So we've just got one guest with us today. But well, what a guest! And I'm being really cheeky actually. I'm bringing all the guests that I used to have on the EVcast when I was working there. They've all followed me, but don't tell Bo and Ryan. I'm sure it'll be fine. Joining us today, all the way from, I hope, a sunny west coast of America, first thing in the morning, not looking too bleary-eyed, must have had a cup of coffee. Chelsea Sexton, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm good. I've had a good week. I've been playing with my motorcycle, which has always been fun.
Yes.
And my excuse is I need a motorcycle license so I can test drive the Bramo Inertia and all of the other cool electric motorbikes.
And you have to get to one of the TTX races.
Yeah, I'm intending to get to the TTX race there's one at Castle Combe, which is just literally down the road from me in the summer. But of course, I will be
Castle
with...
Combe.
There you go. It's well worth it.
Yeah.
Well
worth
it.
Castle Combe race circuit is the best race circuit in the country for both for spectating and for driving around. It really is a cracking circuit. So yeah, you get yourself down there.
Mike, tell us a little bit, because you used to race, didn't you?
I did. Oh, that's a while ago now. But yeah, I used to race cars rather than motorbikes. And Castle Combe Circuit was without doubt my favourite circuit. From a race driver's point of view, you go up from the start straight where you can really get up some great speed, and then you go over a brow of a hill on a slightly left-hand corner, and then you've got this sharpest right-hand corner you see on any circuit ever, and with negative camber, and it really is great fun to drive around. It's also a great place to spectate on that sharp corner. It's Quarry Corner. And the number of accidents and spins and all sorts of stuff goes on there. It's a great place to watch from. Yeah, it's the fastest race circuit in the United Kingdom.
I'm not sure, Mike, that I would necessarily want to be, connected with a racetrack where there would be lots of accidents on the corner. I don't necessarily expect that.
Yeah, I know. I'm not. There's lots of runoff areas and everything else, so it's relatively safe. But it's certainly where all the action goes on, which is great. And I remember taking a couple of guys around who'd never been on a race circuit before, who thought they knew it all and everything else, and going around that corner. You go over the brow of the hill, so you come to that corner absolutely blind, and at that point they absolutely, completely and utterly panicked because I deliberately at the time wasn't looking at the road because I knew it so well. I was messing about with a cigarette lighter adapter at the time or something silly, and gave them the scare of their life going around that corner slightly sideways. But there you go, good fun.
I tell you what, I really want to do, and I bet Chelsea would do it with me if I asked her nicely. Chelsea, how about going over to Germany in a nice fast electric sports car? And we'll go down around the Nordschleife.
Ooh.
I think I could probably be talked into it.
Who do we need to find to give us a vehicle to go round in? That's what I want to know. Do we know anyone rich enough to lend us their expensive electric sports car? Or do we just have to...
A right speed.
I have a tough enough time putting a regular one in my driveway, let alone getting someone to give me one to take to Germany. So
I have a tough enough time getting any EV working on my driveway at the moment. I'm still stuck with.
I was supposed to be driving a Westfield iRacer this next week. I got a phone call earlier today saying that's not going to be possible, which is a real shame. But that would have been the ideal car for that sort of drive.
Yeah, it'd been fun, wouldn't it? Would have been very fun. Although I couldn't do any driving and filming at the moment because my film kit is still missing in action. When we went and did the test drive of the Nissan Leaf a couple of weeks ago, Mike, I left a little piece of camera kit and they said they were going to send it back and it's still not arrived. Anyway, enough tattling. Let's go on to some of the news stories of the week.
Yeah, where do you want to start? There's an awful lot of stuff going on this last week.
Let's start with Gordon Murray.
Gordon Murray, excellent designer. He's been designing electric cars in general for many, many years.
Yeah, he's a very good motorsport designer. He's been working in the motor industry for many years, as you say.
Yeah, he was responsible for a number of the McLaren Formula One cars back in the late 80s and into the 90s. And then he got onto the McLaren F1 supercar project, and so all the petrol heads have a huge amount of respect for him because he's designed some of the very fastest supercars in the world, and now suddenly going to something completely different. Looks like he's going into competition with the G-Wiz, a very small car, but because of his background, people are taking it very seriously.
Well, some people are taking him very seriously. Chelsea, have you seen this car? It's a T25 and T27. So the T25 is a 3-cylinder gasoline engine, kind of supposed to be a highly fuel-efficient vehicle. Sorry, I've just realised that my microphone is at the wrong height because I started the show on the wrong chair and I went to spin round and went, oh, my spinny chair's not, I'm sitting on a solid one, so I'll just sort of crouch down now. It's a 3-cylinder gas car and then an electric version. It doesn't look particularly fast or particularly safe.
Well, they are saying that it's going to go for Euro NCAP 4-star rating. So it's a small car, but they're saying they'll make it strong enough.
Chels?
Well, it's not a particularly fast car. It has it's another city car. It's another city car entrant. Top speed of 65, which has its purpose, particularly in some of the European cities. In the U.S., that gets a little bit dicey. Both Think and Smart are going to make a go of it. Smart's gambling on 62. Think at least is going to 70, which is kind of, I think, the bare minimum. But notably, 0 to 60 in less than 15 seconds. So that's, just faster than I can walk. And that will probably end up being their challenge. But they're partnering with Zytec, which is, a firm over there that is not known for performance vehicles. So, sort of getting those bits out there, it gives away exactly what it'll be.
Zytec made the drivetrain for the Smart, electric Smart, didn't it? I nearly called it the Smart ED and then changed my mind. The electric Smart. I still call it Smart ED. You see, I try and be mindful of our American audience.
Well, they named it, not us.
Really?
No, I mean Smart named it that. So what else are you going to call it?
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean that also brings up the question of what happens. We'll talk about Tesla in a minute, but maybe if Elon Musk leaves Tesla before 31st of July, no, 31st December 2012. And they choose his successor, maybe suddenly there'll be some strange names of Tesla vehicles. Anyway, Tesla ED. It's not going
somehow that just doesn't go together.
Yes.
There's nothing sort of ED about the Teslas.
Or possibly the Tesla Toupee.
Well, in any case, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens with this one. It's a little bit of the Henrik Fisker story, where a known designer decides to get into the vehicle building space. And certainly electric vehicles are assumed by many to be, another of the same animal. If you can build a car, you can build an electric car. And that's not necessarily so, but at the same time, we've seen some new entrants, a la Tesla, make a go of this who are not traditional automotive folks. So that in and of itself doesn't hurt him. It'll come down a lot to, value for money, particularly as he tries to compete with other city vehicles and especially distribution. I mean, he's a known designer, but it's not a known car company. And whether it's Gordon Murray or Coda or BYD, a lot of these new companies are going to have the challenge of being a company no one's heard of without an established dealership chain. Where do you get them serviced? Who do you trust? And a lot of that may be lent by the distribution channel.
Yeah. And one thing which does intrigue me is, the Raver of now are replacing the G-Wiz with a much bigger car. The G-Wiz is going to be going out of production this summer, and everyone else seems to be going into that market space. So we've had BMW talking about building, quote, a G-Wiz competitor. We've got the Gordon Murray T27, a very small car again. We're seeing lots and lots of concept cars, very small cars, and there is a limited market for such small vehicles. They are just a little bit too small, even for us Europeans. And I don't know who's going to be buying them. I don't know. I'm not seeing any research which says that this is a growing market segment and that people are demanding smaller and smaller cars. But
well, I don't know. I think actually there is space for that. I think there is. I think, we're sort of, especially as gas is not only rising, but just volatile in general. For the last few years, even us nutty Americans have been sort of transitioning a bit more towards smaller vehicles in the gasoline Smart, the Honda Fit, the Toyota Yaris, and we don't even have a lot of the truly small cars that you guys do, but we're sort of, stepping in that direction. It'll come down to price. If this is a $20,000 vehicle, gross price before any incentives, well, then that's one thing. And absolutely, it would be purchased as a second car, third car, or whatever. If it's the price of a Leaf, trying to compete with a Leaf, it's going to have some challenges. And that's what it comes down to for all of these companies. But there is also a definite safety issue in the top speed and in the acceleration. Even where they're meant to be city vehicles, you have to feel like you can at least keep up with traffic. And 0 to 60 in 15 seconds is tough in terms of doing that. So they'll come down to that.
Really
at the same time, it also, I think, it'll vastly impact this whole neighborhood electric conversation. It was interesting to see all of the comments when the Insurance Institute crash tested some NEVs and went, oh my gosh, these actually don't perform very well in a crash. And everybody was shocked. And the only thing that surprised me was that it was news to anybody. And so the one really good thing I see coming out of city cars is that they potentially will relegate NEVs to where they're meant to be, which is campuses and other things. But this last several years of interest in putting neighborhood electric vehicles on main roads and increasing their speed scares the heck out of me and other folks like me. Yeah. So, developing more different types of vehicles so that each one can be used where they're best used is the most promising aspect of more companies getting into smaller vehicles.
Let's just bring up that crash test for a while, because they did the golf carts, they did the NEVs. Am I forgiving? Because I think I saw, I think it was on either Fox or ABC, they did this test with a smart car as well and tried to make out that the smart cars were incredibly unsafe. But Chelsea, you drive a smart, right? I drive a smart. Yeah. They're not designed to be. The design brief of a smart car is, if it gets hit, you replace the car. It's a very safe vehicle. It's got this safety cell, but
exactly. I mean, look, part of the issue with the story around crash testing the smart, and same thing with the story of crash testing the neighborhood electrics, is that if you put any size vehicle against a much larger vehicle, the big one's going to win. I mean, it's just sort of laws of physics and math. So that part is no shock. But the NEV doesn't have the speed or the maneuverability or the doors of a smart. So it is that much more vulnerable and has that much tougher time even maneuvering in traffic. And the NEV proponents love to kind of come back and say, yes, but they can't go that fast, therefore they won't be in high-speed crashes. They can't control what the other vehicles are doing. And everybody knows that on a speed, on a road that's a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit road, people are often going 45, 50 or more. So the fact that the NEV can't exceed 25 miles an hour has no bearing on the potential, catastrophe of that impact. It is, more about using each vehicle where it's meant to be. And there's absolutely a place for city cars. I used to drive one of the old things here and thought it was great. Top speed of 55 miles an hour, drove it around the city. It was great in the city. Wouldn't take it on the highway, but it wasn't meant for that. Yeah. Those types of vehicles have their place. So it's devil in the details, really, for Gordon Murray and the others. But there's potential if they can get the whole formula right. If the specs and the price can match up and get credible distribution to help shore up the newer companies who don't have the reputation they're going to need.
But it's the pricing. I mean, that's the big question. We just have to remember. Sorry, my laptop just went. I'll shut it up now. The thing that these companies don't have, that Gordon Murray doesn't have if he's working on his own, is the distribution, the servicing, the number of trained mechanics who are willing to work on the vehicle. I mean, it's something that microcars in the UK suffer from greatly. We have these quadricycles. We have electric quadricycles and we have gas-powered quadricycles, both of which obviously are really, really very, very, very good for going around towns and small distances. We've got a local dealer near us, so we see quite a few of the little 2-cylinder diesel quadricycles putt-putting around our local town, local city, and they make a heck of a racket. But they get 60 miles to the gallon, and you see a lot of people who don't have a full car license driving around in them, and they do just great. But I've heard from several of them, if something goes wrong, you have to go back to that specific garage, and there's not the level of trust from mechanics because it's a different thing and they don't want to touch it. And so that those things have got to be factored in as well when they're talking about selling the vehicle. And
one thing which is going to be interesting though in the UK, we've got one thing which I guess you don't get in the US. We got 12,000 electric vans on the road, and we call them milk floats. We go around, back in the 60s and 70s, milk and vegetables were delivered delivered to your door by the milkman every morning, driving an electric van. And there's 12,000 still on the roads today. Now, most of these were built in the 70s and 80s. Quite a few from the 60s. There's one that drives around here, which was built in 1967. Now, there's a network already in the UK of companies who specialise in servicing these vehicles. They go to the depots and they service them. And there's probably 150, 200 different companies in the UK already doing that. Now, for electric vehicles, if you're a small manufacturer wanting to set up that maintenance network, you can go to a handful of these companies and say, look, can you do the servicing in this area? Hey presto, you've got yourself a servicing network, but not a servicing network where you go to a garage and get it serviced. A servicing network where the engineer comes to your door and service it.
Which is kind of what Tesla have been doing in certain parts of the States, right, Chelsea?
Well, worldwide, they really do it that way. The mobile service rangers, there's a variety of ways to skin this cat, and it's not one that will apply only to these smaller city vehicles. It'll really apply to any newer EV company that doesn't have an established dealer chain. So Tesla had to address it. They did it by setting up their own stores. But Bramo partnered with Best Buy to help provide that distribution, that credibility, and that
was
servicing.
A smart move.
And so there's opportunities for some of these guys to do something similar. Coda just announced that in the U.S. they're going to rely heavily on the Firestone chain for their servicing, which is kind of an interesting move. It's a really well-known brand in the U.S., but they're well-known for things like tires and oil changes. They're not known for really full service on vehicles, and particularly not advanced transportation. So curious to see how that works out, but there certainly, as this evolves, there will be some incumbent service networks that have to evolve also if they want to stay in business, and this is one way that they might evolve. So there could be some overlays of training and some established chains that could help take up some of that slack. So it's not that it can't be done, but there are huge questions to address for all of these companies. So whether it's the existing sort of milk float folks, or there's not as many sort of EV service centers here, but there's a few, things running around, or partnering with different other established brands to help shore that up.
I have a question actually, which comes in with, traditionally there's been kind of just two types of main fuel for vehicles. And in the States, traditionally it's just been really one. It's gas.
And
occasionally diesel.
Outside fleets. Yeah,
occasionally
little propane and CNG, but it's restricted.
A little bit of propane, a little bit of CNG, but they all get serviced pretty much by the same chains of garages. People are generally pretty clued up on them. Do you see a point in the future where, because we've got air car guys rumbling along in the background, and again, there are prototypes now buzzing around France of little city air cars that are comparable in size to this Gordon Murray T27. I could
buzzing
quite
is a really good word for that.
Yeah, I could quite conceivably see the T27 ending up as an air car as well, because it's the right kind of size. Well, yeah.
No.
But, I mean, there are those drivetrains are coming along too. You've got obviously the hydrogen fuel cell folks. You've got the hydrogen combustion engine folks. You've got the electric, the plug-in. You've got the hybrids. Do you ever see a point in the future where garages stop trying to deal with all the different fuel types? Because it's quite obvious we are now increasing the number of fuels available, the number of fuel choices. People saying, okay, well, I have to go to this particular garage to serve my type of car.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that there's a lot of common parts between them all. At the end of the day, it's a car. And there's quite a bit of crossover outside of the fuel system in terms of a service center being able to service really any of them.
Yeah.
That said, a lot of these advanced technologies will only be serviced for the next 10 or more years by the dealers that sold them. Not least because they're going to be under warranty, and that's where you have to go to get them serviced. So I don't think we're immediately going to see a lot of independent garages working on these things, except for possibly with some of the entrepreneurial companies or the conversions, that kind of thing. But eventually we may well see some specialization. We're already starting to see garages, like Luscious Garage in San Francisco, that specializes in hybrids or better. Hybrids or more electrified. They don't really deal with the regular gas stuff. Not that they couldn't, it's just that they see their particular niche interest and competitive advantage in specializing. So whether for technical reasons or marketing reasons, I absolutely think we'll start to see, we're the hydrogen garage or the EV garage or whoever it is, but particularly on that really advanced stuff in the early years, it's gonna go to the Chevy or the Honda or the whatever dealer and not to the independents.
And of course,
I'm interested in what Coda are doing because if they're going to the Firestone outlets, I can see exactly how that would work. Because about a year ago, I was talking with an electric vehicle manufacturer who were looking to get into the UK and having the same situation: where are we going to go for the servicing? And we eventually ended up with a lot of talks with QuickFit, which is a similar sort of idea to Firestone in the States. It's a tyre and battery and exhaust place, but they also have servicing centres and all the facilities you'd have in a main garage. Now, the way we were going to do it was quite simple. There would be telematics on the vehicle itself, reporting on the battery technology and on the drive of the vehicle, and all that could be monitored remotely. If there was a problem, then we would know which battery needed replacing or what the issue was. If we couldn't fix it remotely, we'd contact the owner and say, take it to your local QuickFit garage, and would let the QuickFit garage know exactly what they needed to do, to which battery they needed to replace or whatever it is they needed to do. We then back that up with a small network of people. We were planning on 5 people covering the whole of the United Kingdom who would be able to be parachuted in if there was a much more complicated technical issue. And because we had remote diagnostics, we'd be able to do that at the same time as the driver turned up at the QuickFit centre for the first time. So it wouldn't be a case of the driver having to come back several times to get his vehicle fixed. So if you've got your remote diagnostics in there, that can work extremely well, because all the other stuff you need to worry about on an electric car is your brakes, your suspension, your steering, and your tyres, all the stuff which you have on every vehicle and which QuickFit and the like are perfectly able to maintain and support. So I can see for people like Coda and for some of the small manufacturers, that approach is probably the best way of doing it.
Yeah. I think also, we are biased towards electric cars because we're all electric car drivers and advocates. But I think the same thing is going to be paralleled with other fuel types as well.
Absolutely.
Really interesting kind of side to this is obviously Chevy have started training people on how to deal with crashed electric cars. Now, on the face of it, people look at it and go, crikey, that's really dumb. And other people will look at it and go, oh, that's really scary. And that's really, that's fear-mongering. And I'm sure, Chelsea, that Doug, our good friend Doug Kortoff would probably say all that GM are just trying to scare people away from driving them.
Actually, what's funny, and I suspect I would agree, was that, again, that this is news. I thought it was interesting that GM represented as their first emergency responder training. And in general, I'm sort of enjoying, in a weird kind of way, all of the automakers talking about all of these things they're doing as the first ever. Well, we did emergency responder training on EV1. I still have the manuals lying around. Yeah. It is important to go to all these various service providers and get them comfortable with the technology. We've done it on hybrids. Every time there's a new thing that comes out, you have to go through this process. It's not fear-mongering. I think most people actually are more comfortable with it because we do get the question quite a bit. It's just part of the process. And so it's good to see them address it. It's weird to see them flog everything as news, but it's the responsible thing to do.
I am right behind it because you know what? As you know, I used to have a Prius. I used to have a plug-in Prius, and actually, the plug-in Prius attracted more suspicion and more fear than a regular electric car. Because my experience, if you're driving an electric car, that's maybe one that you've converted yourself, or it's one that you've worked on, and you know the vehicle inside out, as I've done with my 3 previous electric cars and my current electric car. If you have an accident or if you get picked up by the breakdown truck, you talk the talk and they go, okay, that's fine. Your average consumer might not be quite as geeky as the 3 of us.
Us geeky?
And I'm sure,
think?
Rhea, maybe. And, I'll give you an example. When my Prius was taken away, when it got damaged and had a battery explosion and it had to be picked up, the scrapyards won't touch them. The scrapyards will not touch the Prius. They are scared of them.
Yeah, well,
because there's a big sticker on the battery pack that's got a picture of a lightning bolt and danger of death.
And half the wires are covered in orange, and yes, they are new, and a lot of the technicians don't want to go near them for the same reasons, either safety issues or that they can't work on them as fast and won't make the same money. But humans are afraid of change.
Yeah, absolutely.
New things take some getting used to, and it's a really basic phenomenon. But we sort of make it into more than it needs to be when it comes to electric cars. So there ought to be training. There will be training. There is starting to be training. We'll see a lot more of it, and all the other fuels as well as they come online.
Well, my argument, Charles, was that emergency responders need to know which cars are electric, identify them, and be able to go through a series of set procedures to make sure that the car is safe, just as they would if they turned up at the scene of an accident and there was a car with gas leaking all over the ground.
Sure. Well, and ultimately, I think we'll find that ultimately, I think we'll find that the EVs turn out to be a lot safer, with their high voltage containment and different things. I would imagine the emergency responders are freaked out much more by the converted electric vehicles that don't have those kinds of systems. Yeah. But, doing this is as much for the benefit of the public as it is for the benefit of the emergency responders, which is why you do make it into news so the public can see that you are doing this, because they are more afraid, I think, than the responders are at the end of the day. But, there's also a core point that these are not that much different than dealing with hybrids. We already have at least semi-high voltage running around in hybrids. It's not 400 amps and volts like some of the EVs, but it's up there. And so this is just the next layer of that similar technology when it comes to how do you deal with it in an accident.
Right, and that again is going to have to be taken over into hydrogen fuel cell cars, hydrogen internal combustion engine cars, because I think we need to make that differentiation. There are two main types of hydrogen cars, right? You've got the hydrogen fuel cell, which are basically a glorified electric vehicle with a fuel cell converting the hydrogen into electricity, and then you've got the hydrogen combustion vehicles, which I think BMW have been developing, which is a regular car engine that burns hydrogen instead.
Right.
And I think a little bit of gasoline.
I'd be a lot more freaked out by something you can't see.
Sorry, Charles?
The fact that you can't see, I said I'd be a lot more freaked out as an emergency responder by a fuel that you can't see when it's burning.
Yeah. Let's talk about fuel efficiency. So Michelin have come out with some new tyres this week, haven't they?
They have. It's interesting. I mean, they've been working on their eco tyres for some time, and of course, they make a huge difference to economy. I did some tests a few years ago on bikes, and we were testing different
tyres
on bikes.
Or motorbikes.
But bicycles basically, and just to see what the difference between the different tyres are. And if you've got a mountain bike with mountain tyres, then you end up getting 25 to 30% less range on an electric bike than if you put road tires on. And if you go for the eco, the low rolling resistance eco tires for a bicycle, you've got another 10% again. So there was a huge difference in terms of the range and the performance on an electric bike. Now, of course, big differences between bikes and cars, but at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff is the same. You've got rubber on the road, and either you can go for high grip or you can go for high eco technology. Yeah. And of course, the best always is there's a balance between the two. But it can make a huge difference to range and performance. I know Raver have been doing a lot of testing on their tyres for their new NXR because they're saying exactly the same. You can add 20% extra range just by having the right tyres on the car.
And I think, thinking back, Chelsea, you had special tyres on the EV1, didn't you?
We did, and Michelin made them, actually.
Exactly, and they were called Eco something or other, weren't they? Eco.
I don't know that we actually had a name for them. They were just, they made them just for the EV1. And what was interesting was that they were, they weren't really run flats, but they had sort of, tar inside them that would patch small holes and things. They performed really well, and they were dead cheap. I mean, they were something like $75 a tire, which for these specially designed tires, you'd think would be a whole lot more. So, Michelin's been playing in this space for quite some time, and it only makes sense given their long-standing interest in all things efficiency and alternative fuel, and that they're working on it. So, I think it's good. Yokohama's taking a different approach with the composition of their tires based on orange oil. I think we're going to see a lot more of this sort of component-driven eco-mindedness, both for efficiency and for environmental reasons.
I'm just gonna say it now. If you had to ask me to trust between Michelin and Yokohama, I'd probably trust Michelin first, because my experience of Yokohama tyres are that they're great for racing, but really awful for everything else. I have yet to have a Yokohama tyre on any vehicle that I've driven that actually grips in the wet. Ever.
Interesting.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, would you agree with that,
Tesla
Mike?
uses them.
I would.
Yeah, I had Yokohama tyres on my hot rod, and it was fine when it was nice and dry, but when it was wet, you went sideways. It made for interesting driving, of course, but I also think Michelin worked with Honda to develop that the first generation Insight tyres as well.
Insight. They did. Yes.
So, I mean, they do have a hugely long history. But let's talk for a second about how you can make your regular... Someone in the chat rooms just said, and a Tesla crashed in the rain? Coincidence? I'm not saying anything, Dominic, in the chat room. I think that was a slant towards the Yokohama tyres.
Tesla does use Yokohamas for one version of their tyres. They have a couple tyre choices. I've never heard anything bad about them, really.
Yeah, but you live in California. It never rains in California, Chelsea.
Once in a while.
I've never tried to Tesla in the wet. So
you know what? That's precisely the point. It doesn't rain very often, so California drivers suck at driving in it. So you'd think actually it would be worse here in rain. And I thought people would probably hear if the Yokohamas were having some issues in the Teslas.
Well, maybe it's just that I'm using soft. I was using a soft compound version. Like a
but there's the performance version, so you may be right about they're great for performance and not for regular driving.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Which is fine. Anyway, where was I? Let's talk about how things you can do to save your fuel economy with your tyres. Because there's one of the things that if you're driving a car, it doesn't matter whether it's a Tesla electric sports car, or you're driving a 1937 Citroen, or you're driving a motorbike, or you're driving a great big estate car, or a little smart car. You can save an awful lot just by changing your tyre settings, can't you, Mike?
You can. Getting the tyre pressures absolutely right. And sometimes the tyre pressures that the manufacturers suggest isn't quite right for the sort of driving you're doing or what have you. So, if you're brave, then you can experiment, but obviously you do that at your own risks.
Yeah,
but,
I would say please don't. I mean, there are some people in the States who go to extreme, and it is around the world as well, but I think the States has more people doing it, the hypermilers, who go to extreme lengths, and they'll pump their tyres up to stupidly high pressures in an attempt
absolutely.
to save.
I mean, you've got to remember that when you're going at high speed, your tyres are hotter than when you're going at low speed, and so therefore, if you pump up your tyres really, really high in the first place, and then you're driving fast and hard and for long distance, then your pressures in your tyres are going to be absolutely immense, which is not a good idea. I mean, typically we used to reckon on going around a race circuit, if you had a normal car and you decided to take it around a race circuit, pump up the tyres another 5 psi all the way around. And the same for sort of motorway journeys if you're going long distance, but then don't forget to bring them back down again afterwards. It does depend on your driving style and the like, and on the weather conditions. I mean, in the rain, you get if you've got heavy rain, you've got about 15% extra drag on your tyres. The way you get around that is to increase your tyre pressures, but then you lose your grip. So you don't increase your tyre pressures, in wet conditions, because you lose your safety. So there is a compromise between getting the low rolling resistance and safety, because if you want to stop in a hurry, that's what you want your good tyres for.
But there's another thing that you can do, isn't there, Chelsea? Tracking, alignment, just getting the car set up right.
Well, I would say that even on the tyre pressure, before you even get to the point of overinflation, most people running around don't have their tyres inflated properly to begin with. But yes, obviously tyre pressure and alignment, but let's be clear, the biggest thing you can do is pay more attention to your right foot. It will make more difference than whatever your tire pressure is. So in terms of getting more out of your vehicle, just a little moderation, which I'm the last one to preach that when it comes to driving, but that's the reality of it. Yeah.
I say turn your driving into an eco competition. It's really addictive. I have this really cool iPhone app. I'll grab my iPhone. It's probably off at the moment, so I'll turn it back on because I turn it off when I'm doing the show, and I don't think I have it on the iPad. Well, I can't use the iPad because this is the studio look. How cool is that? It's a new iPad, which a little collie have bought, and I can now use it to switch images. So if I press that button there, look, it switches to just me, and if I press this one here, it goes back to everybody. How cool is that?
See, now you're just showing off.
I'm showing off. But there's this really cool app that you can get that records your fuel economy. So you could do it for, keep a record of how many miles you get on a charge with an electric vehicle. You can do it with how many miles you get on a tank. You could do it how many miles you get per gallon. And we've got this great little app for the iPhone. I think it's called MPG. And I actually emailed the developer a couple of weeks ago and said, hey, are you going to introduce electric cars in to that application? And he said, I've had several requests and I'm going to think about it. So as soon as my phone has started up, I'll get everyone. If you've got this app, email the guy and say, please put electric cars in to the combination, because it would be really cool. And what we have here, my iPhone has just crashed. It's very sad. I'll just find the application. It's called Road Trip. There you go. Road Trip by Darren Stone. I'll hold it up to the screen. You can see it there. That's the application to get. It's a great application, and it helps you with your fuel economy. It tells you, what your miles per gallons are, and it just, as you can see there, the last time we filled up our smart car, we got 58 miles to the gallon. 58? 56 miles to the gallon. And you turn it into a competition with your partner or whoever else drives your car. See who can be the most fuel efficient. And as Chelsea said, use the right foot less.
I'm one of those people who...
Go on, one of you at a time. Chelsea.
I was going to say there's a bunch of things you can do, trip planning and walking more. I mean, there's a variety of things in terms of increasing general vehicle efficiency. But adding the right components to electric vehicles in the first place, and regular cars, so that consumers have to think less, is in the grand scheme not what I would aim at, but certainly makes it easier for more people to get involved in saving petrol.
I would say, though, that learning to drive efficiently actually gets you more into driving fuel-efficient vehicles. We talked about this last week on the show. Hybrids being a crutch into electric cars. What else has been going on this week, Mike? Riva.
I don't know.
Riva. What have they been up to? Back to electric cars, because that's what we know the best.
That's the one. Yeah, GM India. General Motors in India had signed a deal with Riva last year to develop an electric version of the Spark called the e-Spark, which they showed earlier on this year. A little 5-seat, sort of 5-door electric car. It was quite a basic electric car, actually, based with lead-acid batteries and everything else, specifically for the Indian market. And Riva were working on with them with some other designs and other projects as well. Since Mahindra has taken over, General Motors have decided to go their own way. They have said that they actually made that decision a couple of months ago, but that doesn't seem to make much sense, because they're also saying that they potentially are looking for another partner for India as well. So what that means for the e-Spark and for other electric vehicles in India, nobody really knows yet. Obviously, a blow to Riva as well, although they seem to have plenty of other projects that they can be working on. So which is good. So a real shame, because they were planning to get the e-Spark into production and out with customers by October. It would be one of the very first electric cars from a big manufacturer.
What's going on with Riva? We had this little thing last week at the end of the show about we had a little chat with Riva. Well, what's really going on with Riva? Chels, do you have any thoughts on Riva at the moment, with the Mahindra and Mahindra takeover and everything else?
Yeah, I mean, Riva's been trying to make a go at this for years and just sort of not really gone very far. And certainly, they've sold a lot of the G-Wiz, but I think they've been trying to get beyond that. And it was an interesting fit with GM in the first place. I'm not sure that I ever had a lot of faith in it, and it was also a little bit under the last regime. GM's in general making a whole lot of changes under their sort of new GM, but also as they continue to have a lot of turnover in the upper ranks. So, in some level, I think it's just new leadership, new direction. Not to read too much into it, but if Riva ever wants to seriously stay in this and not be overwhelmed by all of the new entrants, now that there actually is some competition, they have to partner with somebody with some capacity. And
Right.
Mahindra, I think, actually makes some sense. They've been wanting to get into this too for some time. I think in general, we'll see all three of the major car companies over there get much more into electric, whether for their market or another. And so seemed kind of inevitable for something like this to happen. I hope they do get out of their own way, though, now that there are some other significant car companies competing in the city car space.
Who do you think could future partner with Riva other than Mahindra and Mahindra? Because obviously Mahindra and Mahindra have not any experience in EVs. They do have experience of. Do they not have? They have experience in EVs, do they, Mike?
They have. They've built. There's a three-wheeler they have that Mahindra have over there, which has been available as an electric version for quite some time, a number of years. And various other industrial machines that built in for warehousing and all that sort of stuff with electric motors. So yes, they've got some electric vehicle experience already, but not really with passenger cars and that sort of thing. And so where Riva come into that is that they've got experience with road vehicles and long-term battery management and all that sort of stuff. So that I think is the real benefit for Mahindra and Mahindra. But what I'm also interested in is what's going to happen with GM India, because of course they have a joint venture with Chinese automaker SAIC, Shanghai Automotive Company, who incidentally own MG. They're the
people who own MG.
That's right. There's rumours that MG will be coming back to the United States in 2012 as well, but that's another story. But SAIC have also been developing electric cars over in China, and they were showing one at the Beijing motor show last month. 75-mile-an-hour top speed, 75-mile range, 4-seat, 2-door, and it could well be that General Motors India has got access to that technology, because there are rumours going on that GM India will have a brand new electric car in 2012. SAIC are talking about having their electric car out in 2012. So maybe I'm putting 2 and 2 together and adding 5, but who knows?
I don't know. I just get this feeling that we either need to partner with somebody outside of Asia or outside of India to be applicable to the rest of the market. And I think this is a problem. This is the problem that some of the Chinese car companies have had up to this point. They make Chinese cars for the Chinese market and everybody's happy. They try and bring that outside of the Chinese market, and suddenly they hit this big brick wall of regulations and rules and standards and safety concerns and engineering methodologies that they may not use for the domestic market because they don't need to, but which the US market and the European market are going to demand. And I think by going with someone like GM in India, they had the potential of making the Spark a worldwide vehicle at some point. But I don't know. Chelsea, you were going to say something.
Well, sure. Absolutely. I mean, look, the challenge is really no different than we saw with the initial entrants when the Japanese came in, and then the Koreans. It took each of them 10 to 20 years to truly establish themselves as reputable vehicles and reputable brands outside of their home areas. And there actually has been speculation about whether the Chinese and or the Indians could increase that curve by introducing something that wasn't available by everybody else. They could have absolutely opened a huge door with electric vehicles a couple of years ago. Now that everybody and their mother is building an electric vehicle, that's going to be a whole lot tougher. But that is absolutely the mission, whether it's as a Riva or a BYD or frankly a Koda, who for all of their flogging themselves as an American company is really a Chinese car. So that will still come down to how do you convince everybody that you have the fit and finish that's expected, you have the reliability. At the end of the day, that they end up having to go above and beyond, do twice as much to be thought half as good. The Koreans did it by doing longer warranties than anybody else at the time, and we have yet to see really what the Chinese or Indians will do with respect to earning that credibility. So far, what I'm seeing isn't all that impressive, even from BYD and Coda, let alone Riva or something.
BYD's vehicle, we had Mark Geller on the show last week, and he said that the fit and finish of the Coda was not what you would expect of an American spec'd vehicle. And I suspect this is the biggest problem that's facing all of the new wave of small specialized car companies. And I think this is the year, I hate to say it, I think this is the year that they die. A lot of them will just die or be swallowed into, and I hope they get swallowed up rather than die, because some of them have done some great work. I mean, Riva have done some great work on electric drivetrains. They've done some, they know the electric car platform pretty well, and it would be a shame to see their work go to pot. But at the same time,
they do for low speed vehicles, though.
They do for low speed vehicles.
This is a dual conversation of, I think you're absolutely right. I think a number of the companies, I'd say vehicle charger, a few of the incumbent companies who have sort of enjoyed the lack of competition are going to end up struggling and either being swallowed or just shut their doors now that we have everybody playing in the space. There's also absolutely a discussion around Riva of, yes, they know low-speed vehicles. What they have been doing is not incredibly sophisticated compared to what, highway-capable vehicles and all the battery management stuff that's in those. So part of it is, will city cars emerge as a class that is reputable and trusted and can achieve their cost targets and stuff to survive, in which case Riva has a whole lot better chance than if city cars in general don't. So there's a few different things that really kind of leave them vulnerable. But as an incumbent, if they can team, even with starting with a Mahindra, whether they end up also with any of the other companies over there, Tata and that kind of thing, remains to be seen. There's obviously competition among all the majors as well in terms of who everyone's allowed to marry with. That will all determine their future success. But yeah, if they were able to get in with a non-local major brand, wherever that is, obviously that increases their credibility. It's the same discussion around distribution with some of these other folks. If you can get a credible distributor, even if you're a new company, that helps you out. Same thing.
What do you think of the Daimler joining up with BYD?
Well, Daimler seems to be partnering with anybody that can fog a mirror these days. First Tesla, and BYD, then Renault.
I didn't want to say anything.
You invited the right.
And according, because these IPO court documents, I've been reading those this week, obviously for the IPO floating of Tesla. Part of the agreement is that I think either Daimler or Tesla can leave the agreement if they feel that the gist of it is if they feel that their intellectual property is being compromised, or their relationship is being compromised by another company coming in and being involved. And of course, Tesla have just got into bed with Toyota. And I think if you asked me, if I had to choose between Tesla and Toyota or Tesla and Daimler, I knew which one I'd go with. Because one is much bigger car
everyone's
company.
kind of going toward this, oh my gosh, Tesla's going to sell it to one of them. I'm not sure. I think there's at least one more major automaker in the mix in terms of a Tesla partnership, if not more. I also know, Elon's ego has absolutely sort of been bent around building his car company. And, rightfully so. It takes that kind of ambition to take on a mission that big. So I'm not sure we're going to see a buyout anytime soon with either one of them.
The real life Tony Stark, as we like to call him.
Yes, right. Well, yes, that's the story. Is that Tony Stark was based around Elon. But, there's certainly also a lot of speculation about how serious Toyota is anyway with all of this. And, right now, this is looking more than anything just like a massive PR move on Toyota's part. And, for political reasons and marketing reasons, and may or may not actually, end up in anything, especially given Toyota's historical attitude toward anything with a plug and lithium batteries and Tesla. So, who knows? And also for the same investment, Toyota's going to end up with a lot less of the company than Daimler did, just purely on when they made the investment. So for the same $50 million, Toyota will probably end up with about a fourth of the stake that Daimler got. But Daimler's taking an interesting approach by partnering with everybody. I actually think the Renault partnership is more interesting than any of the others, not least because they partnered with Renault on the Smart, which is a little bit like Ford partnering with somebody else on the Mustang, going to someone for your flagship vehicle. But Renault is incredibly aggressive on electric vehicles. So they have gone to 3 companies that are making really big plays at electric, kind of partnering with all of them, seeing what happens. The notion of putting Tesla batteries in a Freightliner by Daimler is also interesting. So they seem they're putting a lot of eggs in different baskets to see what will work. What that says about their commitment remains to be seen. Ford's doing the same thing in a different way, partnering with other companies to bring them their electric vehicles to everybody that looks like Ford doesn't have any of their own technology. I'm not sure the same conclusion is drawn about Daimler, but certainly it begs some questions about what the end game is and what the purpose is and how it will affect all of these various partnerships. But they're each so distinct from the other in terms of product offering and philosophical and technological approach. I'm not sure that they're going to end up being threatening to each other anytime soon. But car companies in general trying to partner is a sketchy thing and doesn't work out.
And they've been doing it for
does.
Years, haven't they?
Yeah.
Whether it's a new carburetor or whether it's, a new drivetrain or, they've been doing it for a long time.
Right, but when it comes to doing a car together, more partnerships fall through than work out. And,
or they come out with some dodgy cars.
Yeah,
but we see this in Europe, and it's been a way of building cars in Europe for a very, very long time. What's happened, certainly over the last 30 years, we've seen a lot of it, where car makers will get together to build a non-core car. So MPVs, in Europe 20 years ago, they weren't really sort of a big market, but every manufacturer realized it's going to be a big market. So you've got Fiat Fiat and Peugeot got together to build an MPV, and Ford and Volkswagen got together and built an MPV, and various other manufacturers got together and built their own MPV, which would end up being branded as 2, 3, 4, 5 different vehicles manufactured in the same production lines. And we see it with vans all the time. We're seeing we saw it with executive cars. The previous model Saab 9.5 was the same car as the Fiat Chroma, which was the same car as the as a Lancia vehicle, and
it happened with Ford.
We saw a lot of
the Ford Fiesta. The Ford Fiesta a couple of generations ago is now the Mazda 121. They sold the car lock, stock, and barrel, and said, "Okay, you can start making it now."
Yeah, and Fiat with the Fiat 500, it's the same car as the Ford Ka that we've had in Europe. It is the same car. Obviously, it's got a different body shell, and the suspension setup is different, but it is built in the same factory as the Fiat 500, Fiat Panda, and the Ford Ka are all built side by side.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting.
So, we see it an awful lot in Europe. I know what you're saying, Chelsea. You don't see it so much in the States. And we also see a lot of companies come together to talk about, work on different technologies, and a lot of them seem to fall apart. I suspect a lot of that is because in the States, in North America, you've got one big market. You all speak the same language. You've got the same routes to market throughout the whole of the area. And in Europe, you've got lots of little different markets, all with different language barriers, all with different likes and dislikes, and one mark which might be really, really big in one country will be non-existent in another, and so you get these partnerships, and they work together simply because at the end of the day, a lot of them won't be competing with each other. So you'd have Seat, who are very, very strong in Spain, but they're non-existent in Germany. And so so Ford wouldn't see Seat as a direct competitor in most of their business. So those two companies working together on a project would work really, really well. Same with Ford and Fiat, because Fiat are very, very strong in Southern Europe, but they're fairly weak in Northern Europe, where Ford is stronger in Northern Europe than Southern Europe. So again, a partnership there actually works because they won't really be competing quite so strongly in the showrooms.
I think that's true. My sort of general observation, Kate, was less about that and more just about people playing nicely in the sandbox and, fighting over the same toys. And that quite often these fall apart just simply because of human personalities, less than competition or anything. My point was only that I'm not expecting vast success out of either one of those partnerships. We'll have to wait and see. Certainly more seems to be coming and came sooner out of the Daimler partnership, batteries on the Smart, talking about their programs, that kind of thing, then right now everyone's already pulling away from the Toyota thing. So on both sides, Tesla, which is a little interesting to watch. But if one of them falls through or both of them fall through, I'm not sure I'd read into it too much above and beyond the fact that this happens in the industry, that sometimes these things don't always work out. There may be more to it. We don't know yet. We got to wait and see how they evolve. But I'm not calling winners or losers just yet. I don't think we have enough information, particularly on Toyota.
Sure.
Let's talk about something that I've kept in my back pocket, as it were, because I really want this company. I'm just going to disclaim this now before I say anything. I really want this company to succeed, and I'm being sincere, but I don't think they have a cat in hell's chance.
You're talking about Aptera again, aren't you?
What? Me? No. Yes. Okay, I am talking about Aptera. So, yes, it's the 3rd of June, so 2 days ago, they released their little newsletter for the month. It was much less verbose than the previous month's newsletter. Do you want to know what caused the door to fly open, according to Aptera? If you watch the Automotive X Prize footage from last month's stage, there was some pretty abysmal handling on the part of Aptera, and they took multiple attempts to, multiple is a nice way of putting it, multiple attempts to pass the slalom course and handling courses, and it was all a bit of an embarrassment for them. And on one particular part of the course, there's a picture of the car almost fishtailing, and then a door flies open. Want to know what caused the door to fly open, Chelsea?
Absolutely.
The button was in the wrong place.
The problem is that you've got a car that's still being developed, but they're developing it in the public eye,
and that's
which
the stupid
is
thing
a problem
to do. I mean, I'm sorry, Mike, but who develops?
I agree.
I mean, Chelsea, the impact, right? The impact when it went and won the race in Australia, right? That was pretty much a tested and fully working thing then, wasn't it? It wasn't hanging off
I don't think
bits.
the mistake here is developing a vehicle in the public eye. Some of these various pilot programs are sort of exactly what's going on. And, I think that's all well and good. The challenge is representing it as anything other than a vehicle in development. Aptera for a while has been saying, we're coming to market with this thing, which suggests that they should have already figured out where the buttons need to go.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the condition of the vehicle versus where Aptera is representing it and the company and their readiness to produce to be.
I don't see how anybody will continue to have faith in the company. Sorry, Chelsea, carry on.
Oh, no. I mean, that was basically it. It's, things like that don't give anybody any faith that they'll actually be able to do what they're saying they're going to do in the time frame they're going to do it and have the vehicle be reliable.
And the other thing is people are saying that there is, I mean, Aptera have said, we were a bit overweight in the test. I don't think they were talking about the driver. They said that first vehicle. And they made the excuses because it's an engineering prototype. They're what they call design intent. And I don't know very much about the pre-production process for a car, but it's kind of the stage before they go to production intent. The final prototype that they are going to use to then make the real things. They said this prototype was overweight and it had some handling issues and everything else. And I think with the illustration of the handling from last month's event, unless the vehicle is extremely overweight or extremely unbalanced, they've got a lot more than just shifting a couple of buttons. If a vehicle handles that badly, it says some really nasty things about the modelling process. Yeah, in this machine was supposed to be computer designed, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the understanding I had. It was designed on a computer aided design. It was going to be aerodynamic. It was going to be very, very scientifically laid out. I mean, Wired magazine did an article on these guys I think it's about 3 years ago now. They've been in the public eye 3 or 4 years, haven't they, Chelsea?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And back then they were saying, well, it's nearly going to be ready. We're nearly ready for production. It's coming next year. It's coming 2009, coming 2010, coming 2011. And it's just not going
I mean,
their way. And they're making
some
lame excuses. That's the thing that really bugs me. They're making lame excuses. They're not saying, well, I'm sorry, we got a few things wrong. We're going to tidy it up and we're going to send it out. They're making excuses and they're not making any friends with that. Sorry, Chelsea, carry on.
Well, I think you're exactly right. I mean, in part, the timing shifted is a result of new management. Paul Wilbur came in and kind of said, hey, I want to make this much more like a real car. I don't want this to be more of, it's kind of the hand-built thing that Steve and Chris started out sort of envisioning. So that shifted the timeline. And there's a lot of debate internally about who wanted what and what really caused the delays with the car. But I think two things are important. One is absolutely, you're right, the attitude, the defensiveness. And, I thought it would have been better if they'd kind of come out and said, oh, wow, stuff happens. We learned something big at the X Prize. We're going to go fix it now, rather than sort of the ongoing defensiveness. And it started in the whole tear-up between management that has been going on. But also, regardless of where they stand at this point, there are so many other companies. Again, comes back to competition. 2 years ago, they would have had a lead, and now they're going up against Nissan and Mitsubishi. And, yes, their car is unique, and yes, it is attractive because of that. I'm not sure that it has the market price they think they do. Well, exactly, just because of that. And, trying to compete with all of these other companies at their prices is going to be tough. I mean, Coda has the same issue. They kind of came out. Yeah, I mean, they've been saying, our Coda is going to be between $30,000 and $35,000. And we all kind of went, well, that's interesting. It's about Nissan pricing, going to be a little dicey for someone to want to pick a car from a company no one's ever heard of that's another 100-mile electric car versus just go getting a Leaf. Yeah. Well, now it's come out, that's net pricing. That's after incentives. So before, they have a good $10,000 difference. Their car will cost more than a Volt now based on the recently available information. So all of these entrepreneurial companies have that basic huge hurdle, in addition to the fact that they haven't gone out and built trust with the public, with the stakeholders, earned some ambassadors that can say, yes, I've seen it, touched it, driven it, it's real, or working on it, whatever, to help buy them some time and some faith while they figure this out.
Yeah. And the other thing
I agree. I mean,
sorry, Mike.
What is interesting, though, is that there's still an awful lot of money being pumped into these small companies. I mean, Coda last week we reported on, another huge amount of investment. This week, Fisker have added another $189 million in their latest funding round, which means they can now access the $500 million loan from the Department of Energy, which is huge amounts of money they're getting coming in. We also talked about last week Raver getting a big injection of money from Mahindra and Mahindra, and all these small companies, unheard of companies, if you like, have been getting a lot of investment coming in. These people aren't doing it just to play second fiddle to Nissan or whatever. There's a plan. And some sort of plan to take over the motor industry with these unbranded companies. These companies have got to build up their brand. I'm not saying it's impossible, because we see it in the computer industry all the time. We see some significant changes in the industry every few years, where an unheard of company comes in and takes over that part of the industry. And I believe that could well happen with the car industry in the next few years, if they get their marketing right, if they get their products right. But what you're saying is absolutely right, Chelsea. They've got to get the public trust. They've got to get the confidence in the products. They've got to make the right products for the market. If they end up being slightly too expensive to start off with, well, there's things that can be done about that. But the way that it's being marketed and everything else. But the products themselves have got to be right, and that's a huge mountain to climb. With all this money coming into the industry, yes, it can be done. But it's when you hear stories like Aptera sort of coming up with these excuses after excuses, that is worrying. Very worrying.
Aptera's defence, they did say we learnt a lot and we looked stupid. Basically, and I'm paraphrasing their newsletter, but I think really I'll tell you what I think about this whole Aptera brand. If they'd sold the Aptera as a what they call help me Mike, it's a KCD? No, completely knocked down. KCD, completely knocked down car. A kit car, basically, if you will.
Yeah.
The enthusiast, because it's an enthusiast's car, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest. It's not a Tesla. It's not a Leaf. It's not a Volt. It's not a Prius. It's a vehicle for enthusiasts, which was originally designed by some really clever guys who came up with a cool idea, and it was going to be fantastic, and then it was taken over. If they sold it as a kit car, or they sold it as a vehicle that people could build at least partially themselves, I think it would have a future. Think of the Buggy. Now, the Bug-E is, for those of you who don't know, the Bug-E is a 3-wheeled motor trike scooter kind of, I don't know what it is really.
Thing.
And it's not got a roof, but it's got a kind of a partial enclosed front bit, and it looks a little bit like an insect, which is why it's called the Bug-E. And those things do 50 miles an hour, and they're quite popular in the warmer states of the Union, and that's fine. But they're kit cars. You build them in kits or kit motorbikes, and you can buy them fully assembled, or you can buy them in parts and make your own, and you've got the plans, and it's all fine. I'll give you another example, the Twike. Chelsea, have you ever been in a Twike?
I have not.
Okay, Mike, have you ever twiked?
I haven't twiked yet. Something I do want to get around to doing.
Well, I'll explain the Twike for you. The Twike is a 3-wheeled, again, 50 mile an hour, 3-wheeled, 2-seat electric vehicle. It looks very crazy. It's got a single wheel at the front, 2 wheels at the back. You steer it with a joystick. It doesn't have a steering wheel.
Like a helicopter, isn't it?
You steer it with a joystick. And it's got 2 versions, one without pedals, so you can just sit there and be lazy, and one with pedals and turns it into a human electric hybrid.
I love the way they advertise it as a hybrid, because as well as electric motor, you can pedal it as well. I think
but I tell you what, they're great fun to drive. If you're going on holiday, if I could go on holiday somewhere picturesque, like, I don't know, the Alps, or I could go, I don't know, to maybe to some other mountain range somewhere, and there's some nice smooth sloping road that I can drive along in a Twike with very low traffic. I'd love to take a Twike, because you can have the roof down, you can pedal, and you can be doing 50 miles an hour and your feet are going around really, really slowly, but it keeps you fit. Yeah. It's a sociable experience because you can have someone with you. Because there's no steering wheel, there's no steering, traditional steering and brake pedals, the windscreen goes almost down to the floor. It almost feels like you're sitting in a helicopter driving along the road. It's a really surreal experience. And the Twike is fantastic. But the Twike is struggling, and has always struggled to sell, because it's so expensive and it's not a kit vehicle. Again,
£16,000. I mean, that's $24,000 for basically a pedal tricycle with a cover on it and a motor.
Oh no, that's a bit unfair, because I mean it does have pretty good acceleration, and it can do 100 miles. With the right, but you have to buy the battery separately as well. That's without batteries, and you have to add batteries onto it. And again, it's a niche vehicle that's just too expensive for the mainstream. Chelsea, what do you think? These vehicles, do you think they would survive if they were conventional, if they were turned into conventional kit vehicles?
No, probably not. I mean, it depends a lot on the business case and how many they need to sell in order to survive. That's kind of the approach that Tango took, although theirs was a wickedly expensive vehicle. I think there's certainly a niche for kit cars, in the same way that there's a niche for conversions. But in the volumes these companies have been pegging toward in order to survive, I don't think they'll be able to do it. There's absolutely a place for the unique vehicles, and certainly, Twike might get away with doing much smaller numbers than I know Aptera has been aiming at. But somebody like Aptera has to be a real car. And, the challenge also is that while they resent it, the 3-wheeled companies really have to compete on safety. And that's a lot of what Paul Wilbur has stood on, and really a lot of sort of the initial credibility that Aptera had kind of when he came in and said, nope, I get it. This isn't a real car for NHTSA purposes and for DOT, but I'm going to make it a real car. It's going to be as safe as anything else. We're going to crash test. And a lot of us kind of stepped back and went, oh, okay, because the historical approach with three-wheelers had been, let's get around all safety regulations. Unfortunately, you know, all of the other sort of Aptera implosion stuff, while we all sort of root for them and want to see them succeed, sort of tarnishes that general enthusiasm over the idea that they actually will, or at least in time.
Yeah.
So, you know, short of somebody kind of coming in and saving them, I'm not sure it'll happen. And there is a lot of money being invested in a lot of these entrepreneurial companies. You know, some of it is, I think, more well-guided than others. You know, Tesla and Fisker is one thing. Fisker still sort of bothers my mind. But, you know, watching some of these other folks, I see a little bit of a let's tick the box approach on the part of some investors and venture capitalists who simply want to be in the transport space and I don't think are doing enough research. A lot of it is sort of getting caught up in the enthusiasm, and some of it is absolutely hearts in the right place, but still the vast majority of investments fail at this early stage.
It's the dot-com bubble again, I think.
Well,
I'm sorry,
it's
heading that way.
But
it's not that degree, but it is. I think a lot of investors are a bit stupid. Some investors aren't. Some investors are very, very clever and they put their due diligence in. But I think at the moment, if you can start a car company and put the words electric and vehicle or hybrid or fuel cell in the name, you can get a stupidly large amount of media.
Sure, it's a hot topic, and people are smart enough to figure that out. And the double-edged sword of having venture capital come into transport is that it's a huge influx of both money and, frankly, attention. They brought a lot of attention to it. At the same time, venture capitalists operate off the mindset that 85% or so of their deals are going to fail, and they accept it and they're comfortable with it. Whereas we're not. So, yes, a lot of these aren't going to work out. And historically, a lot of the entrepreneurial, particularly electric companies, haven't worked simply because it's really hard to compete in the auto space. And the fact that they're venture-backed doesn't change that fact. And the fact that they accept that most of these deals will fail isn't going to encourage that. So I do absolutely look at some of them and go, what the heck were they thinking? Usually
I'm going to ask you what you would rather have. Would you rather have companies where, the old school auto companies where everything's done behind closed doors and we don't know anything about a new vehicle until it comes to market, pretty much, which is what happened with the Leaf. I mean, Nissan kept that one pretty quiet. I mean, people close to the grindstone knew what was coming on, but generally they kept things pretty close to their chests. Or would you rather have a whole sea of car companies like Aptera going, like BYD, like Coda going, hey, look, we're producing a really cool vehicle, and then ending up being vaporware?
I think the rules have changed for all of them. I think it's neither one of those two things, because given the history of this technology, even the large companies aren't getting away with being fully secretive anymore. GM had to be relentlessly sort of open, almost to the point of being a joke, with the Volt to get anyone to believe it all. Ford is suffering mightily because they're not doing that. And same thing with the small companies. It doesn't matter whether you're Ford or Fisker, you have to start playing in this industry a little bit. And that doesn't mean like revealed to the public, but it does mean at least have some initial conversations with some stakeholders who are respected in the industry, who go around and populate other people's opinions, who do comment to the media, so that at a minimum, those people can say, I can't tell you the details, but I've seen it, I've touched it, I've driven it, I've whatever. It's a real thing. And I think Fisker and Coda and Ford and Chrysler, big and small companies alike, have all suffered and will continue to suffer by the fact that they've all taken this. We know what we're doing. Either the small companies tend to take the everybody in Detroit's stupid, we're going to do it differently approach. The big car companies tend to take the we've built cars for 100 years, we know how to do this. Both of them are doing themselves a disservice by taking that attitude. This is a relentlessly community-based technology. And same thing with the industry. And to avoid that is to the detriment of your company and your product.
And when was the last time, the other thing is, it's all about hype. When was the last time that you can think of that a regular car sold or had 13,000 commitments to buy a vehicle? Or at least interest to buy a vehicle before it even goes onto the production line.
Oh, smart.
It's been a while.
I mean, in
Really
fairness,
smart. Yeah.
In the
But I
U.S., it had a year-long waiting list. It had 100,000 people on the list. Now, not all of them panned out, but absolutely. It's not as common on gas cars because we don't tend to talk about petrol vehicles with as much lead-in as we do electric cars. In their effort to convince us they're real this time, they have come out, all of them, with a lot more information than they traditionally would, even Nissan and the Leaf, running around with the prototypes and different things. So, there has been some of it, but it hasn't necessarily been in the right place. And I had one of the entrepreneurial car companies tell me recently when I was sort of going at them saying, you guys really have to start reaching out and building some credibility and at least start with the stakeholders and different things. And the response I got back was, oh, yeah, no, totally get it. We've been a small company. We haven't had the human resources, but we have a new PR plan coming, which is going to solve all that. And I kind of said that you think a PR plan is going to solve this is entirely your problem. And, that's exactly the approach they're taking right now. And it's interesting to watch them do it.
Well, we've got about 5 minutes left, and there's one final thing I want to talk about because I know it's a pet peeve of Chelsea. I think it's a pet peeve, Chelsea. BBC Radio 4, I think it is. There's another trip, another long distance trip in an EV. This time it's in a Think. This week I've seen 3 or 4 different trips of people in production EVs. Now, there are some very clever young people, down at the UCL in London who have designed and built their own electric sports car, basically converted a gas sports car into a long-distance EV using lithium-ion batteries. Very, very impressive vehicle. They drove twice around the London M25, which is about 100 and some miles each.
119 miles.
Each trip, Mike?
Yeah, 119 miles.
So they did 238 miles in total.
Right.
So well done to them. And they are going to be driving the Pan American Highway just for fun, to illustrate that electric cars can do it. And it's a specially designed electric car. And they've got this whole... And I don't mind these guys doing it because they're a group of students. It's not a production vehicle. It's about the journey, not about the vehicle. But lately, there are so many trips in electric vehicles that have just seem completely pointless. One of them, the Venturi Citroen Berlingo, a glorified post office van. What's with all these trips, Chelsea? Why? And a lot of them seem to be done by newspapers or radio stations. I mean, it's fantastic that they're giving electric vehicles, the publicity, but half the time it seems to prove that they're no good. I mean, I don't know.
It is, I think, very counterproductive in most cases. I've seen effort after effort, whether it's a car company behind it or a newspaper or individuals, set out with this mission to prove that EVs can do anything, and really what it proves is that they can't. I mean, it's the number one way to feature limited range, which isn't a problem on a day-to-day basis for users, but becomes a problem when you highlight it. And it sort of puts artificial attention on that one point to the detriment of everything else. I get it that we're all obsessed with gumball rallies and cannonball runs, and particularly in the U.S., although certainly not uniquely. We like this idea of going cross country and driving to Vegas and all of these sorts of things, and that's great, and it gets a lot of attention. And I agree. There's a difference between it being about the journey and it being about the human interest story of we just kind of want to see if we can do it, versus trying to prove something about the car. Right. It's when it's about the car and when it becomes a marketing tool for electric drive technology that I tend to have a problem with it. I think one of the number one things that the Volt could probably do is shove a few people in it and let them drive cross country in 3 days and challenge any other EV to do it. I mean, it absolutely pulls to the forefront the advantage of a technology like that over a pure electric vehicle, even though in the grand scheme it's not sort of, we'd like everyone to sort of play nicely, but I think it'll ultimately backfire on the pure electrics. This continues to happen, and I wish people would be more creative in their marketing efforts.
Yeah, someone in the chat room says, you might as well prove you can take a smart on the Rubicon Trail, wherever that is. I don't know that particular the trail, but I hope I've said it right. Yeah, I mean, Yeah, sure, a smart car can drive 600-700 miles in a day and be absolutely fantastic, but that's not really what it was designed to do. And you drive long distance in one, and it's going to be less comfortable than if you were going in a luxury sedan that's built for freeway cruising. It's as simple as that. Apparently, it's a 4x4 challenge road in the Sierra Nevadas. Bob Tregillis, my co-host on This Week in Energy, would get very upset with me at this point if I didn't know. So, Chelsea, it's been a great show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And your episode
number
2 guest. Oh, she's so sweet to me, Mike. I don't know what I've done.
Oh, you've got lots of fans. Oh. That's what it is.
Oh. Well, I'm the only person. I'm going to moan now. I'm the only person doing the show today that doesn't have a Wikipedia page.
Well, you better go get yourself one then. I'll create one for you.
I'm not supposed to do that.
How's that?
I'm not supposed to do that. I'm not creating my own.
They're overrated.
That's not good. Yeah, that's true. Because they put lots of personal information. Like I found out the other day,
scary,
Chelsea.
I gotta tell you
that I found out your birthday the other day. I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, dear God.
I remember that because it's one day different to somebody else in my family. That's true. That is true.
That's very true. It is Wikipedia after all.
Anyway, Chelsea, where can people find out about you and all of that jazz?
I'm Twitter, at EVChels, and I'm occasionally on Autoblog Green and evchels.wordpress.com.
Fantastic. And Mike, as always, is at Mike Boxwell on Twitter, right, Mike?
Something like that, yep. That's the one. Mike Boxwell on Twitter.
And also owningelectriccar.com.
That's the one.
Which kind of helps sponsors this show. So please buy Mike books. Please buy Mike's book. As always, if you want to give us feedback for the show, you can do that. You can tweet us. We are on Twitter at Evolve Transport. I know it's the wrong way around. Not Transport Evolved, but Evolve Transport. So that's the way it needs to be, because otherwise it doesn't fit on Twitter. And you can email us feedback at transportevolved.com. I forgot the address. How bad is that? Feedback at transportevolved.com. Now, we are going to be having a new website coming up very shortly, which is going to have the most fantastic designs of Mr. Steve, who was early on, and that's the logo. Doesn't it look good? I like that logo. It's very snazzy.
Fantastic.
And he'll do the upper thirds, which go just the lower thirds, which go down here, telling you who it is, and the station logo, which will be just up there. And we will be on the iTunes store this week. We've made an application, so we should be listed as a podcast. You can also find us on blip.tv. We're on Boxy, and also I understand on various other internet video sites like AOL Video, etc., etc. Do tell your friends, families, co-workers, dog, cat, anybody who can, operate a computer and download the show to just do that, because the more listeners and more viewers we have, the nicer it is for everybody in place. And I hope Chelsea will come back in a couple of weeks. Once we've got her, we will not let her go. She muted and she said, "I think I'll come back." Yeah, she did. I looked at her.
I was trying to mute my typing.
Oh.
I finally learned the muting the typing, so I was trying to do that. Yes, I would absolutely come back. And likewise, on sort of once we have you, we don't let you go.
Oh, yay. Right, that's about it, Mike. So, we're not going to do the news show. We talked about doing a news show. It's coming up in a couple of weeks' time, and it's called...
That's right.
10.
10.
Why is it called 10, Mike?
I'm trying to remember. Oh, yeah, Transport Evolved News. So the idea is you get all your electric car news in 10.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's going to be electric cars and other vehicles, as we've said before.
Absolutely, and there'll be video feed and everything else for that as well. All pre-recorded, so to look really, really flash and posh.
And that will be on a Thursday morning. It'll be released on a Thursday morning in the UK. And this show's released on a Friday morning in the UK, or Friday during the day in the UK. So you get it by your weekend. And that means I don't have to work at the weekend. Right. Mike doesn't have to work at the weekend. All our guests don't have to work at the weekend. Although work is a loose term because no one's getting paid right now until we get a sponsor. Anyway...
We're working on that.
That's about it. Thanks very much for joining us. My name is Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield.
And my name is Mike Boxwell.
And this has been Transport Evolved. And as always, use less gas. Take care. Bye.